Most men fail at semen retention because they treat it like a test of willpower. They think success means gritting through urges until they break. But neuroscience reveals a different truth. Your brain doesn't respond to force. It responds to systematic rewiring. Every failed attempt teaches your neural circuits that retention is temporary, that relapse is inevitable. Perfect retention for 90 days isn't about becoming superhuman. It's about understanding the 3 distinct phases your brain undergoes during this transformation. Each phase requires different strategies because your neurological needs change as your reward systems recalibrate. Master these phases, and you don't just complete 90 days. You emerge with a fundamentally different relationship to pleasure, focus, and personal power. The man who starts this journey is not the same one who finishes it. Section 1: Default Circuitry. Your brain operates on prediction algorithms. Every time you've sought sexual release, you've strengthened neural pathways that anticipate dopamine through the easiest available route. These pathways become highways of automatic behavior. You don't consciously decide to seek stimulation. Your brain simply routes attention towards sexual triggers without your awareness. The first 30 days aren't about resisting these pathways. They're about starving them of the inputs they need to fire. Visual triggers are the primary fuel for sexual neural circuits. Your brain doesn't distinguish between real and imagined sexual stimuli. Both activate the same reward pathways and strengthen the same anticipation loops. This is why most men fail, even when they avoid explicit content. Instagram models, Netflix scenes, even fitness influencers can trigger the dopamine anticipation cycle that makes retention feel like constant battle. Perfect retention requires environmental design. Curate your visual inputs like your life depends on it, because neurologically, it does. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's executive control center, strengthens dramatically when youth sexual stimuli. Think of it as your brain's CEO, responsible for long-term planning and impulse regulation. Constant sexual stimulation forces this region to work overtime, managing urges instead of managing your life. When you eliminate visual triggers, the prefrontal cortex can finally focus on what it was designed for, building the life you actually want. This isn't willpower. It's resource allocation. You're not fighting your brain. You're finally letting it work for you instead of against you. Section 2: Routine. Day 31 is where most retention journeys die. The initial motivation fades, discipline burns out, and men find themselves relying on depleted willpower reserves. But neuroscience shows us that willpower is a finite resource. The more you use it, the less you have. Perfect retention during this phase requires a shift from conscious resistance to unconscious automation. You need to build systems that make retention the path of least resistance. The basal ganglia, your brain's habit center, becomes your most powerful ally during this phase. This ancient brain region automates repetitive behaviors, turning conscious actions into unconscious routines. Morning workouts, structured work blocks, and consistent sleep schedules all activate the basal ganglia, creating neural grooves that support retention without requiring constant decision-making. Your brain stops asking, "Should I retain today?" and starts operating from, "This is what I do." The shift from question to identity is everything. Mental fatigue is the silent killer of retention streaks. Your brain burns glucose making decisions, and every moment you consciously resist an urge depletes your cognitive reserves. By month 2, you need decision-making systems that preserve mental energy for important choices. This means predetermined responses to triggers, structured daily schedules, and environmental modifications that eliminate temptation before it arises. You're not building discipline. You're building a lifestyle that makes discipline unnecessary. Sleep becomes your most critical retention tool during this phase. Poor sleep disrupts your prefrontal cortex function, the brain region responsible for impulse control and long-term thinking. When you're sleep deprived, your brain defaults to primitive reward-seeking behavior because higher-order thinking goes offline. Quality sleep isn't just recovery, it's retention insurance. 7 to 8 hours of consistent sleep timing strengthens the neural circuits that make saying no Feel effortless rather than exhausting. Physical movement serves as both energy outlet and neural reinforcement during days 31-60. Exercise triggers the release of BDNF's brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which strengthens the connections between your prefrontal cortex and limbic system. This biological process makes rational thinking more powerful than emotional impulses. But the real value of consistent movement is psychological. It proves to your brain that you can commit to difficult things daily. Every workout becomes evidence that you're someone who follows through. The strongest retention practitioners aren't the ones with the most willpower. They're the ones who've made retention the automatic choice. Section 3, Redirection. Sexual energy is creative energy in its rawest form. By day 61, you've successfully interrupted your brain's default sexual circuits, but that energy doesn't disappear, it accumulates. This is where most men experience the energy overflow phenomenon: restlessness, increased aggression, or overwhelming urges that seem to come from nowhere. Perfect retention requires understanding that this energy must be transmuted, not suppressed. Your brain needs new neural pathways to channel this biological force. Flow states become your primary tool during this phase. Flow is the neurological state where your prefrontal cortex downregulates self-criticism while your focus networks hyperactivate, creating effortless concentration and peak performance. Building something tangible, a business, a skill, a physical transformation, triggers these states naturally. Your brain stops seeking dopamine through sexual fantasy and starts generating it through creative achievement. This isn't distraction, it's neurological redirection. You're teaching your reward system that creating is more satisfying than consuming. The final 30 days reveal the true purpose of retention, not abstinence, but transformation. Your dopamine baseline has recalibrated. Your attention systems have strengthened. Your self-image has shifted from someone who struggles with impulses to someone who creates meaningful outcomes. By day 90, the urges that once controlled your attention become background noise, easily dismissed by a brain that's discovered more sophisticated forms of satisfaction. You haven't just completed a challenge. You've rewired the fundamental patterns that determine how you allocate your life force. The retention journey ends, but the man who emerges operates from an entirely different neurological foundation.